Hi there, and welcome back to another biology exam prep session. I'm Lenata Cowie-Clark, your teacher for today, and remember that these lessons are brought to you by the Division of Education, Innovation and Energy e-learning program. Okay, so let us look at eye defects. So I am wearing glasses, so I do have a defect in my eye, as do a lot of persons. Some come on with old age, not my problem, and some are what you may have been born with. So let us go through eye defects. So the first one we look at is long-sightedness, also called far-sightedness, also called hyperopia or hyperopia. So when someone is long-sighted, they see very fine or very clearly at distant objects. So when the object is far off, they will see normally. So here is normal vision for someone who is long-sighted. The image is formed on the retina, no problem. However, when they look at an object close up, it looks blurred. And why is it blurred? Because the lights do not converge or meet properly on the retina, rather they go behind the eye. Now technically you're not going to see anything behind the eye here. So what is happening is that whatever is formed on the retina here is what the person will see. And because the lights did not converge, it is going to be blurred at a close distance. So when the object is close, for someone who is long-sighted, the object is blurred. So what will cause this? If a person has a shorter eyeball, so the distance between the cornea and the back of the eye is short, you may have the image forming behind when you look at something very close. Or it may be a defect in the cornea here. Or more than likely it's a defect in the lens. So it means that the lens is not convex enough for the close object. So there is some kind of defect in the lens where the lens is not bending the light soon enough. So how do we correct that? We would want an object that is going to bend the light before it reaches into the lens, the natural lens. So you have to provide that person who is long-sighted with a lens that is going to bend the light sooner, so that by the time it reaches the natural internal lens, it is at the correct angle to focus the light onto the retina. So someone who is long-sighted needs to wear a convex lens. So light from the object is here, light from the object is going to be bent inwards. As you can see, the light coming in, and the light is bending inwards for the convex lens, so it is converging the light rays, so that when it enters the defective internal lens here, it is focused at the right angle, so that it hits the retina at the correct point. So long-sightedness is corrected by a convex lens that the person will wear outside of the eye, so that it bends the light before it reaches the natural lens. So let us look at someone who is short-sighted, as in my case. Short-sightedness is also called nearsightedness. You would hear those terms. You would also hear myopia. All three are used interchangeably. So when a person is short-sighted, they will see close objects very good. So this is normal vision of a close object. The object is formed on the retina, no problem. However, when a short-sighted person is looking at a distant object, the object looks blurred. And why is that? Because the focus happens before the retina. So here you will see before the fovea, or the back of the eye. So here we see the image forming in that, and I did not mention this before, so I'll mention it now. This is called the vitreous humor. So your eye doesn't just have a big blank space. There's a fluid in there called the vitreous humor, and there's a fluid just behind the cornea called the aqueous humor. So forgive me for not mentioning that before, but so when you're short-sighted, the image or the focus of the image is blurred because it is not formed properly on the back of the eye by the fovea on the retina. So you have this blurring of the image when you try to look at something far off. So what causes this problem? It could be that the eyeball is too long, or the damage to the lens where it is bending the light too much, so it is too concave or too long and thin, and it is bending the light too much, and the image forms before it is focused onto the retina. So how do we correct short-sightedness? We simply use a concave lens. And how do I remember concave? You actually have this like a cave, right? So if you think about you going into a cave like that, so it's a concave lens, and what the concave lens do is that it causes the light rays to diverge, move away from each other slightly, so that by the time those light rays enter into this defective lens, it is going to bend it at the correct angle so that the image is formed on the retina. So short-sightedness is corrected by concave lens. You want those light rays to be forced apart slightly so that when it enters into the eye, it is now going to be bent back at the correct angle. So we just touched very briefly on a condition called glaucoma. It is in your syllabus, so you just need to know about it. Glaucoma is a progressive condition, so it happens mainly as you get older, and it is where fluids build up in the eye and causes a pressure on the eye. So that pressure will damage or press against the optic nerve, and over time it is going to damage the nerve. So how do we correct glaucoma? It is through, there's no cure per se, but it can be done through medication. So your doctors will prescribe whether it is an eye drop or some other kind of medication to help control the pressure within the eye. I do believe that there may be some kind of surgery, but I am not so sure about how successful surgery is on glaucoma. Because of that pressure, you just need to they may drain the eye, or they will definitely give you medication to help deal with that problem of the fluid buildup in the eye. So we want to move on now to another topic related to irritability, and that is, can you guess? What is the largest organ in the body? Your largest organ in your body is your skin. Your skin. So here are some of the main functions of your skin. It has a protective function. It prevents unwanted materials from entering into your system. So it's the first line of defense, your skin. It controls your body temperature, very important. Of course, your skin is a sense organ, your sense of touch. It helps to synthesize specific vitamins, specifically vitamin D, and it is used as storage. We know that because if any one of you have any fat on your body at all, we know that fat is stored beneath the skin. And of course, it has an excretory function where it helps to get rid of waste materials that have been synthesized within the body. So your skin is called an organ because it is made up of several tissues. So tissues work together to form organs. So your skin is an organ because it has different tissues. And from this diagram, you can definitely see different tissue layers. So you have the epidermis, which is the top portion of the skin. Then you have the dermis, which consists of your blood vessels, your hair, etc. And then you have the subcutaneous tissue, which is at the bottom. So let us look at the different structures that makes up your skin. While it is a very simple organ, it is quite complex as well. So obviously we have the hair shaft, which is basically your structure of your hair, and at the bottom of it we have the hair follicle, the area that controls the growth of the hair. Then you have your sebaceous oil gland. This gland here will secrete a substance called sebum, which coats the hair. It has antibacterial property, and of course that sebum can come out of the surface of your skin and have a sort of protective function on your skin surface. Then you have your nerve endings. Your nerve endings, of course, are either going to have be receptors, or they can transfer information from the central nervous system to a muscle, which will tell the muscle to either contract or relax depending on the situation. So you have nerve endings, and of course you would have a rich supply of blood vessels. If you have ever broken skin, you will know that it bleeds. So your blood vessels are going to bring oxygen and nutrients to the skin to supply those cells in the skin. And then you have your sweat gland. Your sweat gland produces sweat in the form of salts and water and urea, which it would excrete. So this is where your excretory function comes in. And your sweat pore, of course, is the area where the sweat will be secreted at the surface. I want to point out this muscle here, the erector muscle, which is the structure right here, erector muscle, which plays an important role in temperature control. So homeostasis, that is the process where your body tries to maintain a normal internal temperature or normal internal conditions. So in terms of your skin, we're talking about temperature control. And the skin controls your temperature in this way. Your normal body temperature is around, on average, 37 degrees Celsius. If your temperature increases beyond that, you need to have a way of detecting that is happening. So we have thermoreceptors in your skin, which are going to detect any increase in temperature, whether internally or externally. We also have thermoregulatory center in your brain, which can also detect any raise in temperature internally. This information is carried to the hypothalamus in the brain, which, when it receives the information, starts to put in place cooling mechanisms for your body, because you don't want your temperature going to 40 and 45. That is going to affect your enzymes and then affect everything else in your system. So your hypothalamus, once it receives information from the receptors, are going to start putting a cooling mechanism in place to bring your temperatures down. So as your temperature goes back down towards normal, within normal range, you have a negative feedback. So the temperature drops, the detectors, your receptors again, are going to negatively feed back to the hypothalamus and tell it, well, listen, the temperature is going down, so you can stop the cooling mechanisms. Likewise, if your temperature falls below your accepted range of 37 degrees Celsius, maybe you got locked in a freezer, I don't know, or you went outside in the snow, you went visiting somewhere else, and your temperatures fall down, or in a room that the AC is stuck on very low temperatures, then your receptors again are going to come in, whether it's the thermoreceptors on your skin all the regulatory centers within your brain are going to detect that drop in temperature, and the hypothalamus is going to again start warming up mechanisms, which is going to increase your temperature back to 37 degrees Celsius. And as the temperature goes up, you have a negative feedback where your receptors are going to pass information back to the hypothalamus, tell it that the temperature is back within normal range, and it's going to stop the warming up mechanisms. So let us look at what these mechanisms are when your body has been forced to either cool you down or warm you up. So if you are hot, your temperatures have gone above 37 degrees Celsius, one thing that happens is vasodilation. That is where the arteries and the other blood, well, the arteries basically mainly your capillaries and your arterioles, they are going to dilate. In other words, they get larger, and so they bring more blood closer to the surface. That blood is carrying heat, so you would expect the heat to pass through the skin and out of the body. So you have vasodilation as one of the mechanisms to help cool your body down. The next one is relaxation of the hair muscles, or the hair shaft rather. So you call that pylorelaxation. So the erector muscle will relax and the hairs are going to fall flat. So they're going to lower, and when they do that, the heat that your blood vessels would have brought is going to dissipate out. So if your hairs were standing up, you're going to have heat being trapped. You would have a layer of heat being trapped within the hair, and you don't want that. You want the heat to be moved away. So you're going to have the hairs lying flat, or at least flatter, and so that there is no insulation, and the heat is going to dissipate. Then of course you have sweating. When you are hot, you are going to sweat. And how does that happen? The sweat glands is going to start secreting sweat, which would remove heat when water changes state. And finally, your falling metabolic rate, you are going to slow your body down. So you are not going to be respiring as much and generating as much heat. So you are going to cool down that way. When you are cold, obviously the opposite of everything else happens. So you have vasoconstriction, where the arterioles get smaller and they sort of appear to move away from the skin surface, and so it means that less heat is going to be lost, so you are going to stay warmer. Piloerection is where the hair erector muscle will contract. So if you have contraction of the hair erector muscles, you are going to have the hair standing up, and that is going to trap or form a layer of insulation of warm air just around your hair shaft. Then of course you would shiver. What is shivering? It is the rapid contraction of your skeletal muscles, right? Not your cardiac muscles, of your skeletal muscles. So wherever you have contraction, you have respiring cells, and if you have respiration, you have heat being generated. So shivering is a way of heating up or warming up the body. And of course you have a rise in metabolic rate, so you're going to move about some more, which is going to generate heat. So let us look a little more closely at the epidermis of your skin, the surface level. So at the top here we have the cornified layer. Better than know your skin has so many layers. So this cornified layer is made up of squamous cells, and these are dead cells. This is what gets sloughed off on a daily basis. So when you bathe, you remove dead skin cells from on the surface. These dead cells have a major protective role, protecting you from pathogens and anything that may want to enter through the skin. So it's a cornified layer. It is dead cells that has a protective role. This layer is what is called the Malpighian layer. This is all within the epidermis. And the McPigian layer, what I want to notice is that it is made up of these melanocytes. These cells here, so we have one melanocyte in this particular diagram. This melanocyte makes a very important substance called melanin. Melanin helps the body to tolerate UV rays. So the more melanocytes you have, the more melanin you will produce. So darker skinned persons have more melanocytes turned on, more of them active than lighter skinned persons who they have melanocytes, yes, but not all of them are activated, so not all of them are producing melanin. So melanin is a substance which helps you tolerate UV rays better, because when we go out into the sun, we know that there are UV rays which are trying to penetrate through the skin. So the melanin is going to protect the dermal layer, which is here, from UV damage. Right? Protection from those UV rays. So your syllabus dictates that you need to know about skincare regimen, just basic. Okay? So while I'm not here to advertise any particular brand, one basic skincare regimen is washing your skin regularly. And not just your face, of course you need to bathe regularly with a mild soap. So washing or bathing will remove dead skin cells once, so it prevents it from building up. And with those dead skin cells, it removes bacteria, fungus, or anything that would have tried to enter into your system. So bathing regularly would remove those pathogens from the surface of your skin. Also, you need to keep hydrated. Keep the skin moist, hydrated, drink plenty of water. No unnecessary exposure to UV. No unnecessary exposure to UV rays, meaning not going out into the sun unnecessarily, which is going to cause more UV rays to enter into your system and can cause cancer. And lastly, if you have to go out into the sun, you should wear a sunscreen. Now, there are different brands of sunscreens out there. What I want to point out to you is that you have this thing called SPF, and then you have a number next to it. So SPF stands for Skin Protection Factor. And it talks about the length of time the sunscreen is going to be effective on your skin. So if, for example, you know that you burn within 10 minutes of exposure to the sun and you use a SPF of 40, then 10 times 40 is 400. So you have 400 minutes of sunscreen effectiveness or availability if you use that particular sunscreen. So the SPF factor tells you about how effective the sunscreen is. So you need to purchase your sunscreen depending on how long you will be in the sun and how long it takes for you to burn when you go out into sunlight. So this is basic skincare regimen. And we want to look at what is this a fad called bleaching. And it's caused by many names, You have skin lightening creams, fade creams, whitening soaps, dark spot correctors, skin brighteners. And what these do is that they interfere with your melanin production. So if it interferes with your melanocytes and your melanin production, it means that less melanin is going to be produced and your skin color will fade. Now, is there medical use of these products? Of course. So, for example, someone gets burnt in a fire and their skin is badly scarred, then they may need to use some kind of lightening or brightening cream. Maybe they got into an accident and they have scarring, or perhaps they have a condition known as hyperpigmentation. So, under doctor's orders or doctor care, they can use, or if they want to, some kind of brightening cream to help with the problem of the excess darkening of the skin. However, without proper use, skincare products like these can cause major problems. One, they can cause dermatitis, which is inflammation or a rash on the skin. They can possibly lead to cancers, because if you remove the melanin, then you don't have that protective layer and you can get some kind of skin cancer. Of course, you can have this blotchy skin effect going on, and most importantly, use of these products are not permanent. They are not permanent. So from the time you start going back out into the sunlight, you can have the darkening returning, and in some cases it might be worse than before. And also, if you have lightened your skin for whatever reason, maybe to attract a mate, it does not affect your genes or your DNA. So your children are going to come out as dark as you probably are, depending on who the mate is. So remember that the effects of these lightening creams are not permanent. They can cause cancers, they can cause rash, dermatitis, and they may have other unwanted effects that you're not really catering for. So let us look quickly at some past paper questions to wrap up everything that we did today, because we did quite a lot. We talked about irritability, reflex act, reflex actions, normal coordination, nervous control responses. We talked about the eye, and we talked about the skin. So let's go through some past paper questions really quickly. Number 1, the peripheral nervous system consists of the brain and spinal cord. Is that true or is that false? That is false. The central nervous system is your brain and spinal cord. The nervous system consists of brain, spinal cord, nerves, or all of the above. The answer there is all of the above. The nervous system must consist of all of these. The light, number 3, the light sensitive cell present on retina and is sensitive to the intensity of light is rods, cones, both rods and cones, or none of these. Yes, these are your photoreceptor cells, right, on the retina. Number 4, the amount of light entering the human eye is controlled by the ciliary muscles, pupil, cornea, or iris. The amount of light is controlled by the iris. Remember, the iris is the one that you have your radial and your circular muscles which will contract and relax depending and control the amount of light. The pupil simply lets light in. It has no control over how much light enters. The part of the eyes, number 5, refracts light entering the eye from extended objects. So which of these refracts the light? Lens, cornea, iris, or pupil? And we know that it is the lens which refracts the light from external objects. Number 6, the term accommodation as applied to the eye refers to its ability to A. Control the light intensity falling on the retina, B. Erect the inverted image formed on the retina, C. Adjust the focal length of the lens, and D. Vary the distance between the lens and the retina. Plenty words, but the answer here is C. The accommodation helps to adjust the focal length of the lens. How eyes adjust in order to focus the image of a near or distant object on the retina is by A. The lens moves in or out according to the position of the object. B. The retina moves in or out. C. The lens becomes thicker or thinner according to the position of the object. Or D. The pupils get larger or smaller according to the position of the object. Now, A is for a camera. The lens would move in or out. But the correct answer here for the human eye would be C. The lens becomes thicker or thinner depending on where the object is. Number 8. A person was reading a book. She then looks out the window to focus on a tree. The lens in her eyes become thinner, fatter, harder, or softer. So she's focusing here and then she looks out. So for distant objects, the lens must become thinner. Which of the following would converge the light rays the most? So you want the light rays to bend more. So which of these will cause more bending? Has to be the one in the middle, which is your convex lens. Here is your concave. The layer of skin that provides protection against bacteria as well as chemical and mechanical injury is the epidermis, dermis, sebum layer or subcutaneous layer. Your epidermis. Most of the time, your epidermal layer is always that surface layer. Number 11. When the body temperature rises above normal, A. Blood flows to the skin decreases, melanocytes activity increases, vasoconstriction occurs, D. Blood flow to the skin increase, or E. Sweat gland activity decrease. Now this is meant to make you think, and you are correct. If you thought it right, the correct answer would be D. Blood flow to the skin increases. You want that heat to leave the body. 12. Most of the body heat is produced by A. The hypothalamus, B. The blood vessels, C. Contraction of skeletal muscles, and D. Contraction of cardiac muscles. Answer here is C. That contraction of your muscles is going to produce heat. So here are some short answer questions that you can attempt. So part A, state the names of the parts labeled 1 to 5. So we have the labels there, and this, of course, you know, is part of your nervous system, and I will give you a few minutes to come up with your answers. So you can pause the video now and then restart when you're ready. So of course here you would have your receptor. Your receptor is going to pass the information to your sensory neuron, which will pass the information to your relay neuron, and then on to your motor neuron, which will stimulate the, in this case, it's your effector. It's a muscle in this example. Right? A person accidentally steps on a pin, as shown in the diagram. Describe how the parts named above are involved in the response reaction. What is the name of this type of response? So this type of response, you know, is a reflex arc. And while I would not give you word for word what to say, you must talk about the action of receiving the stimulus, and that stimulus converting that information of pain into a electrical impulse and sending the information to the sensory neuron, to the relay neuron, bypassing the brain in the first instance, and then eventually to the effector, where the person will remove their leg from the pin. Right, so you need to involve the function of all of those, describe it effectively to get your full 6 marks. Final question. What does SPF stand for? We know it is skin protection factor. Your friend confides in you that she is thinking about using a fade cream to improve her complexion in preparation for a future career as a model. What sort of advice would you give her? So if you are concerned about your friend using this fade cream, you will speak about all the negatives that are associated with these fade creams, that they can cause cancers, that they can cause blotchy skin, that is not a permanent fix, and that she should perhaps seek out a doctor's advice in moving forward. Okay? And finally, the air conditioning unit in your science lab is set to 17 degrees Celsius, which is way below normal body temperature. Describe how muscles and blood vessels in the skin help regulate your internal body's temperature. Now you see it says here in the skin. So if you start talking about your muscles in your arms and your legs contracting to cause it to shiver, you have gone off course. So the muscle in your skin in this instance would be your erector muscle, and we know that that erector muscle will contract and it's going to make the hairs on your skin stand up to help with the insulating effect to keep that heat within your body. And we know that the blood vessels are going to vasoconstrict to keep the heat within the blood vessels towards your core and keep your internal body temperature close to your normal range. So explain yourself properly with the both of them, the muscles and the blood vessels, and you will get your full 4 marks. Now that is going to wrap us up with this subject of irritability. I just want to leave you with this for those persons who have whatever it may be self-esteem issues, you don't like the color of your skin for whatever reason, and you're considering using the products of the Faith creams. Remember, the best shade is your shade. Love yourself and love the skin that you're in. This brings us to the end of irritability. I do thank you for sticking and staying towards the end. Revise, do as much practice questions as you possibly can in preparation for your exams coming up. I do wish you all the best. Stay safe and stay home. Be blessed. Thanks again, and keep joining us for other lessons from the Division of Education, Innovation and Energy.